In our previous lesson, we reviewed the ideas of adding and subtracting whole numbers that contained lots of digits. I want to continue that kind of review in this lesson by discussing multiplication of whole numbers, including some whole numbers that are fairly large. And I also want to discuss how multiplication of whole numbers is related to division of whole numbers. Before we begin discussing the detailed steps involved in multiplying two whole numbers, let me just quickly mention how multiplication is related to addition. For example, let's say I want to know what 15 times 3 is. Well, one way to compute this is by doing the multiplication. But at its core, 15 times 3 is the same as 15 plus 15 plus 15, or adding 15 to itself 3 times. This is where the idea of multiplication being something times another comes from. And of course, 15 plus 15 plus 15 isn't too hard to compute. It's the same as 30 plus 15, or 45. So 15 times 3 equals 45, and that's pretty straightforward to do in that one example. But of course, we don't always want to convert our multiplication problems into addition problems, especially if the problem we start with is something like 345 times 123. Can you imagine adding 345 to itself 123 times? I don't think so. So while it's very useful to know that multiplication is the same as repeated addition, it's important that we also learn how to complete multiplication problems as multiplication problems. And that's the main goal of what we'll do in this lesson. Now, let's get started with a relatively friendly example of multiplication just to get our feet wet with the idea. Let's compute 43 times 2. Okay, just as with our addition and subtraction problems in the previous lesson, I believe it's very helpful to write these kinds of multiplication problems in a vertical fashion. In other words, I'm going to write the 43 on top and then times 2 just under that. Now, I should comment that you do not have to line up the units digits the way we did with the addition and subtraction problems in the previous lesson. I think it's still really wise to do that, however, so that's what we will do throughout this lesson. We're going to keep lining things up just as we did before. Now, also, this problem is the same as writing 2 times 43, and it could be worked out in that way. It would be perfectly legal to do so. However, I think it's always helpful in multiplication problems to put the larger number on top and the smaller number on the bottom. So in this example, we're going to write 43 on top times 2 on the bottom. Now, as with the addition and subtraction problems, we're also going to work right to left. And our main focus is going to be on the second number. We'll work with it one digit at a time, starting with its units digit, or the ones digits, as some people like to call them. Now in this case, I just have a 2 as the second number, so we only have one digit to work with anyway. But we'll still work that way even when we're dealing with larger numbers later. We'll start on the right and work our way to the left. Now, we're going to take our 2 and multiply it with each digit in the number above, which is the 43. And we're going to start with that number's units digit. So everything is going to be working right to left as much as possible. That means that the first thing we're going to do is multiply 3 times 2. And now if we're learning those single-digit facts with our flashcards, we know that 3 times 2 equals 6. So I'm going to write a 6 underneath, and I would suggest that we line that 6 up below the 3. You don't have to do that, but again, I think this alignment is very, very helpful as you work through these problems. Next, we're going to multiply our 2 now with the 4 that's in the number 43. And when I do that, I'm going to have 4 times 2, which equals 8. And so I'm going to write an 8 down below in the answer section, and I'm going to line it up with the 4 in 43. And that's it. We've actually multiplied the 2 with the 3 and with the 4, so everything has been multiplied together as much as possible, and we simply read off our final answer. In this case, it's 86. Now, before we go to our next example, I think we should really think about this answer just for a second to see if we really did it correctly. 43 times 2 is the same as 43 plus 43. Remember what I said earlier about this relationship between multiplication and addition. So we could see if 43 plus 43 equals 86. That's what it should equal. Well, if I go back to my addition ideas from the previous lesson, 43 plus 43 can be written in a vertical fashion. If I add those units digits, I'm going to have 3 plus 3, which equals 6. I'm going to write that 6 in that answer section, move over to the tens digits, and I'm going to have 4 plus 4 equaling 8. I can write that 8 in the answer section as well, and I look at my answer. It's 86. And we've confirmed then that we did exactly the right things when we multiplied 43 times 2. We got 86 in that case. We know we have the right answer. Okay, let's move to a slightly more complicated example of multiplication just to ratchet up the level of difficulty with these problems. There's a lot of small things we need to learn about these multiplication problems, so we're going to look at lots of examples in this lesson. Here's the example I want to see. Let's find 27 times 6. Okay, we're going to start the example just like we did the previous one by writing the problem vertically, and I'm going to choose to put the 27 on top and the 6 underneath so that I have the larger number on top multiplied by the smaller number below. Now, I'm going to start multiplying the 6 with the digits in the number 27, starting with the units digit in that number. Again, we're going to be working right to left. That means I want to find 7 times 6. Now that's getting a little larger in terms of single digit multiplication, but we've got to have these put to memory. 7 times 6 equals 42. And I really encourage you to know those basic facts. This is one such basic fact. I would even suggest that you learn the multiplication facts up to not just 10 times 10, but 12 times 12. Knowing those quickly will help you immensely as you're working through these larger problems. Okay, 7 times 6 is 42. Where do I write this information? 42 now is too big, if you will, because it's 2 digits long. Well, believe it or not, we're actually going to do something here which is very similar to what we did when we were adding and we had to carry the 1. In this case, we're going to take the 2 from the 42, we're going to write it down in the answer area, line it up vertically with that 7. But then once I do that, what do I do with the 4 out of the 42? Well, guess what? We carry it. It's the same idea as carrying with addition. We write a small 4 just above the 2 in the 27, because the 2 in that 27 is the next digit over to the left from the 7. For now, just ignore that 4. It will come into play in just a moment, but let's just ignore it. Next, I want to multiply my 6 with the 2 in the 27. 2 times 6 equals 12. But now I have to bring in that 4 that I carried a moment ago. How? Well, that 4 gets added to the 12 we just calculated. So what we actually are going to have is 12 plus the 4, or 16. Where do we write our 16? Well, we simply write it with the 6 in 16 lining up with the 2 in the 27, and the 1 just gets written to the left of the 6. And we're done. You simply write that 16 in the answer section. You've actually multiplied the number 6 with all of the digits of 27, both the 2 and the 7. And so we can just read off our final answer. What is it? It's 162. Of course, checking our work here by doing an addition problem would be a bit uglier. We would have to add 27 to itself 6 times. 27 plus 27 plus 27 plus 27 plus 27 plus 27. I'm not sure we really want to do that, but if you'd like to do so, just to check your answer, please feel free to pause the lesson at this time and complete that addition problem. You should get 162 as your answer again. All right, I'd like to do one more example of multiplication with a larger number and a 1-digit number, just so we can practice a bit more with this carrying idea. I promise then we'll move to some longer numbers in later examples. Here's the example I'd like you to try on your own first. Pause the video when you see that countdown icon and see if you can actually work through the steps of this problem. Let's find 174 times 3. Okay, first things first, let's write that problem vertically just to make sure we can work through the problem in a very neat fashion. Notice that I've lined up the two numbers so that their rightmost digits line up. That would be the 4 and the 3 in this case. Now, I'm going to start multiplying that 3 with the units digit of the number above. That's the 4 in this case. And so I'm going to have 4 times 3. What is that? It's equal to 12. Now, what do? I'm going to place the 2 out of the 12 in the answer area, lined up vertically with the 4, and I'm going to carry a 1 from the 12 by placing it over the 7, moving right to left. Next, I'm going to multiply the 3 with that 7. 7 times 3 equals 21. But don't forget that the 1 is there that we carried. It has to be added to the 21 that we just found, and 21 plus 1 gives us 22. We're going to place the 2 from the units digit of the 22 in the answer location, lining it up vertically with the 7, and then we're going to carry the 2 from the tens digit of 22 over above the 1, which is to the left of the 7 in 174. Notice that we're just repeating the same process as before. It's just that we're working with more digits, but we're just continuing to march right to left. Now, I'm going to multiply the 3 with the 1 that was in the 174. 1 times 3 is just 3. But now we have to add in that carrying amount, which was a 2 in this case. So I have 3 plus that extra 2 equals 5. And we write this 5 in the answer location. We've multiplied the 3 with each of the digits in 174, the 1, the 7, and the 4, so we're done. And our final answer can simply be read off in the answer location. It's 522. Now, is that the answer that you got? If it is, then you did a great job. Now, I'd like to move on to raise the level of difficulty in the next examples by looking at problems where both of the numbers are at least 2 digits long. So let's start with two two-digit numbers and multiply those together. Watch to see how what we are about to do is very, very similar to what we did with the single-digit multiplication earlier. It really will work out. There are a few new things we have to do, but we can do them as long as we practice enough. I think you'll see it with no trouble. Let's calculate 75 times 14. Now, as before, we're going to write the problem vertically, 75 on top, 14 underneath, and we're going to line up that 5 and that 4, basically so that both numbers are right justified, if you want to think of it that way, so that they line up nicely. This alignment is going to be important. It's not necessary, but it's very, very helpful as you work through these longer multiplication problems. Now, as before, we're going to start with the units digit in the 14. That would be the 4. And we're going to multiply that digit with all of the digits in the 75, one at a time. So we first multiply the 4 with the 5. 5 times 4 gives me 20. Now, do you know what to do at that point? Of course you do. You're going to place the 0 in the answer location, lined up vertically with the 5. And you need to carry that 2 over just above the 7 in 75. Now what do? Well, you're going to multiply the 4 now with the 7 in 75. You're basically marching through multiplying the 4 with all of the digits in the upper number. And in this case, that's going to give me 7 times 4, which I have memorized. It's equal to 28. Good. But don't forget that number that we had to carry. It has to be added into this amount. That carry was a 2, and so we need to add 28 plus the 2, which gives me 30. How do I write this? Well, I'm going to align the 0 in the 30 just under the 7 that was in 75. And since there are no more digits in 75 that we need to multiply with the 4, we could just put the 3 in the 30 next to the 0 that you already put in the answer location. So the answer location at this point should be showing us 300. But wait a minute, we're not done yet. 300 is definitely not my final answer. Now we have to multiply the 1 that's in the 14 with each of the digits in 75. Okay, but now I have to add a new layer of the process. It's straightforward, nothing to worry about, but it does require us to be careful. So let me explain it here in a step-by-step fashion. First of all, it's important to remember that the 1 in 14 is in the tens digit, not the ones digit. We need to keep track of that somehow in our answer section of the problem. So here's what we do. Just below the 300, on a second line, if you want to think of it that way, I'm going to write a 0 in the units digit. Why? Because it's going to keep everything aligned and keep track of the fact that the 1 from the 14 is in the tens digit. And now, after having written that 0, I start multiplying that 1 that's in 14 with all of the digits in 75, working right to left just as before. So that's going to mean I want to take the 1 and multiply it with 5. 5 times 1 is just 5. And so I'm going to write a 5 just to the left of that 0 that I just wrote in the answer location. There's no carrying here because 5 is less than 10. It's only 1 digit long. Next, I'm going to compute 7 times 1. I'm taking my 1 from 14 and multiplying it with the next digit up. And 7 times 1 is 7. And I just write that to the left of the 5 that I just wrote in the answer location. So what is in the second line of the answer section? It's 750. And that's correct because 75 times 10 equals 750. Remember, that 1 represents a 10 because the 1 is in the tens digit. Now, what do? Well, believe it or not, we now take the two numbers that we have written in our answer section and we add them. We need to add the 300 and the 750, which are already in vertical form. And if you were careful about it, you've got all of the digits correctly lined up. And so now we're just doing a problem like the previous lesson. 300 plus 750. Isn't it amazing how math builds on itself? It really does. And that's why it's important to learn the pieces of mathematics one step at a time so that you can work through more and more complicated problems as you move on. So now I'm just going to add, starting with the rightmost column and working my way to the left. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. And 3 plus 7 is 10. And if I write those pieces down in the usual addition type problem, I'm going to see my final answer. It's actually going to be 1050. Now, let's look at a few more examples just to try to nail down the steps in the process of multiplying whole numbers. You may have felt a little uneasy as I worked through the example we just worked through. It's okay. We're going to work through several examples, and you're going to practice even more outside of the lesson just to make sure you have these steps nailed down. I'd like to suggest that you try this example on your own first, just to see how you're doing, and then we'll come back together to check your answer. Here's the example I want us to work through. Calculate 807 times 23. Okay, let's start by writing the problem vertically, just like we've done every other problem up to this point. 807 times 23. 807 on top, 23 on the bottom. Now, I'm going to line up those digits again with the 7 above the 3, just to make sure everything is nice and neat as you work through the steps of the mathematics. We're going to start with the 3, and we're going to multiply it with each of the digits in 807, moving right to left. Okay, so 7 times 3 is the first thing I want to do, and that is going to give me 21. So I write a 1 below the 3, and I carry the 2. We've done a lot of this carrying now, so you know where to put that 2. And now I move right to left. I now multiply my 3 times 0. 0 times 3 equals 0. Now, we need to pause here briefly because one of the most common mistakes that gets done when students work through mathematics of multiplication is they want to write 0 times 3 equals 3 or something like that. That's wrong, however. 0 times any number equals 0. But don't forget that there was some carry above that 0. We'll work on that in a second. Just remember, 0 times any whole number is 0, and don't make that mistake. Now, we need to handle that carrying that we had, and so we have to add the 2 to the 0 that we just got, and 2 plus 0 equals 2. That 2 now gets recorded next to the 1 in the answer section. Also, there's no carrying to do here, so there's nothing to write above that 8 at this time, since our answer was only 1 digit long up to that point. Now, we keep moving right to left. We need to multiply the 3 with the 8. And 8 times 3 equals 24. I hope you have that put to memory. We could just write that 24 to the left of the 2 in the answer line. And so our answer line at this point should read 2,421. Now, we have to multiply that 2 with the digits in 807. Remember, there were 2 digits in my second number to multiply by. So we go down to a second line in the answer section. We immediately write a 0 in the units digit. Remember, that's because the 2 in 23 is in the tens digit. And we're trying to compensate for that to make sure all the digits line up correctly. So we write that extra 0 into the answer section on a second line. Now, let's multiply that 2 with each of the digits in 807, again working right to left. So first we're going to multiply the 2 with the 7. And when I multiply those two numbers together, I have 14. So I'm going to write the 4 to the left of the 0 in the second line of the answer section. What do I do with that 1? I carry it. And I carry it over above the 0 in 807, working right to left. Next, I multiply the 2 with the 0. And 0 times 2 equals? It equals 0. Don't forget, 0 times anything equals 0. And then I have to add in that carry, which was a 1 in this case. And so you're going to have 0 plus 1 equals 1. I write that 1 next to the 4 in the second line of the answer section. There's no carry here because 1 is only 1 digit long. And so we don't have to put anything above the 8. There's nothing to carry. And now I multiply my 2 with the 8. And 8 times 2 equals 16. Since I'm already to the left edge of that number, I can just write the 16 down to the left of the 140 that's already in the second line of the answer section, because we've reached the end of 807, if you will. And so the second line of my answer section should read 16,140, 16140. Now, again, if we were very careful about it, and I've been very careful on my work, the alignment is perfect. It's very, very important because I now need to add these two numbers, 2,421 and 16,140. And since they're lined up so nicely, I'm all ready to go to do the addition. And so now I just add these two numbers, one digit at a time or one column at a time, and just do them from right to left. And when I do it, it goes pretty quickly here. 0 plus 1 is 1. Write that in the answer section. 2 plus 4 equals 6. 4 plus 1 equals 5. 2 plus 6 equals 8. And 0 plus 1 is just 1. There was nothing in the 2,421 to add to the 1 in 16,140, which is in the 10,000s place in that number. And so it's basically just dropping that 1 down, or you can think of it as 0 plus 1 equals 1. So our final answer is 18,561. Now, let me just say something here. Some of you may have never thought you would actually multiply numbers that big together to get an answer like 18,561 on paper. You might have wanted to jump to a calculator very quickly. But notice here, you can do this. It takes a few steps. It might take a few minutes, but it can really be done. And so I encourage you to continue practicing to build that confidence in order to find an answer like 18,561 with pencil and paper. Now, let's do one more example. This time I want to multiply two 3-digit numbers together. just to see how the steps work through. So here's the example I want us to do. Let's calculate 456 times 123. Now, we're going to start, as we've started all of these problems, by writing the problem vertically. The 456 on top times 123 on the bottom. No problem. Next, just like all the other problems we've done up to this point, we're going to start multiplying the 3 with all of the digits in 456. So we have to work through this one step at a time very, very carefully. We're going to start with that 3 and multiply it with each of the digits of 456, working right to left. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do 6 times 3, which is 18. Write the 8 in our answer section and carry the 1 over, moving right to left. Next, we're going to do 5 times the 3, which is 15. Don't forget to add in the carried 1 that we had there. 15 plus 1 equals 16. We're going to write the 6 in the answer section, and we're going to carry that 1 over as well. It's the same step every time. And next, we're going to move to 4 times the 3, which equals 12. Don't forget to add in the carry again, which was another 1. 12 plus 1 gives me 13. So now the first line in my answer section is done. It should read 1,368. Now, I need to start a second line in the answer section so that I can multiply by the 2 that's in 123. And I need to be sure to write in that 0 in the units digit of that second line, because the 2 is actually in the tens digit of 123. And now that I've got it all set up, ready to go, I start multiplying by that 2. So I take the 2 times the 6, that gives me 12. I write the 2 out of that 12 in the answer section, and I carry the 1 over. Next, I'm going to take the 2 times the 5. 5 times 2, which is the same as 2 times 5, it can be written either way, is equal to 10. I'm going to add in the 1 that got carried over. 10 plus 1 is 11. So I write in the 1 from the 11 in the answer section, carry the 1. Just keep moving right to left. Next, I'm going to take the 2 times the 4. 2 times 4, or 4 times 2, is equal to 8. And I add in the 1 that I carried over. 8 plus 1 equals 9. And I'm going to write that 9 in the second line of the answer section. And now the second line of the answer section is done. It's 9,120. I know that that second line is done because I multiplied the 2 by every one of the digits in 456. So now that's done. Multiplying by that 2 is finished. And now I need to move to a third line in my answer section. And this time, it's for multiplication by the 1 that's in 123. Notice that 123 is 3 digits long, and that's why I'm going to end up with 3 lines in my answer section here. That 1 in 123 is in the hundreds place. So when we go to that third line of the answer section, we're actually going to write 2 zeros. 1 in the units digit and 1 in the tens digit, just to keep everything lined up correctly again before I start multiplying by that 1. And now let's start the multiplication process. I've got those 2 zeros written there. Now I can multiply by the 1. 1 times 6, or 6 times 1, is 6. I write that next to the zeros in that third line of the answer section. Then I multiply the 1 times the 5 as I move right to left. 5 times 1 equals 5. I write that in the answer section as well. Then I move over again. 1 times 4 is equal to 4. I write that in. And that means my third line of the answer section is now done. It's 45,600. And now you should have 3 numbers in that answer section, and they're all beautifully aligned. So what do I need to do? I just need to add them all up. I need to add up 1,368 plus 9,120 plus 45,600. They're all lined up nicely. It's just an addition problem like we've seen in the past. If you work through the steps, you'll see that you get 56,088 as your final answer. Now, We've spent a good deal of time today reviewing several examples involving multiplication of whole numbers, and I hope you feel comfortable now with the steps involved in finishing these multiplication problems. Yes, they take lots of steps sometimes, but it's the same kind of steps as you work through each of the problems. So I hope you can get comfortable with those as we work through more and more examples, or as you work through more and more homework problems, if you will, on your own time. Now, in the next lesson, I want us to talk at length about the operation of division, which is basically just the opposite operation to multiplication. We're going to work through several division problems, especially where some of the numbers involved are pretty big. I look forward to talking with you then.